Bruno. I mean, like, the temptation to do this in Italian rather than in English
We should.
is great, but as I will say to you, somehow, for some strange reason and like, destiny in life, feels more comfortable for me, like, to speak English to you rather than Italian. But let's face the truth, we're two Italian in Las Vegas. It's not a good recipe, isn't it?
No, when things get difficult, we will switch in Italian.
We just got Italian. Let me tell you one thing, just right off the bat, like after the movie Luca, like how many people come to you and say, Bruno, silenzio?
Everybody. Especially employees, especially the creatives.
Okay, look, here, Ocean 15, London International Awards 2022, you are the president of which category?
Integrated.
Integrated category. And you just arrived in Vegas like, less than 24 hours ago?
Yes, yesterday.
Yeah, and it's not the first time you come to Vegas,
No.
right? Okay, so you're already familiar with the craziness of Vegas.
A bit so, yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna like, cross the ocean, like using like this format that I created for London International Awards. It's called like the 7 Seas interview. Every question is based on the analogy of ocean and is rooted like in different things, like not necessarily advertising. Because
Okay.
my goal here is to capture some gems from you that they are not necessarily from the advertising ocean, but
Okay.
everything else. Let's go with the first question, man. Okay. Jacques Cousteau, a French naval officer and explorer, wrote a book called The Silent World, a story of undersea discovery and adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the book, Jacques recounts some of the most amazing discoveries he had made. Let's bridge this into the advertising business. Imagine you wrote a book
Mm-hmm.
about discoveries. What would be the latest discovery you've made in the past 48 months, in the past 2 years?
So I was very skeptical to data, honestly.
Okay.
And but for many reasons, I started working with Sapient,
Mm-hmm.
and in a very precise data process, and I realized how actually data can help finding insights, which
Mhm.
in a way are called discoveries.
Right.
So my discovery was about how to find discoveries.
Where the skepticism about data was coming from?
Because all the
Mhm.
culture, the stereotypes about creativity versus data, numbers as a way to actually to kill creativity, but instead it's the opposite. If you use them right, it's just a way to see where actually the issue comes from.
Yeah, I do think that data surround us. I mean, we wouldn't be functioning without numbers. We wouldn't be functioning without like things that we consider like extremely scientific, right? I mean, think about like, I mean, I've been every time I think about that, it makes me laugh. But like, we are made of molecules.
Of course.
You just like a giant molecules that sit in front of me. So why would it be scaring? Like if like we made of data as well. And I think when people say about data has no heart, it's like to say human beings have no heart. To me, it's the same things. Like we deny the fact that's underneath like our flesh and like inside our bones, like there is a binary system that drives us.
Yeah, yeah.
I do believe that.
But also, if you think that probably most of the creative people in the last 2 centuries are people coming from math,
It's true.
scientists and so on. So there's a very clear connection between numbers and creativity. Sometimes you need to have like a very clear constraints to be creative. So you need to follow a logic that then at some point you break.
It's interesting, like I've been like listening a lot of like Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
It's very popular here in the States, and like the way he talks about the universe and the law of the universe, it's fascinating. And he was telling about like how in math, the concept of infinite is not equal for everybody. So meaning like for everything, meaning it's like one infinite can be more infinite than another infinite, which is a mind blow. He was telling this like during like a podcast with Joe Rogan. And Joe was like, wow, dude, like stop right here. What are you telling me? And he's actually brought the example of numbers. He say, look, like, numbers, as you know, from 1 to is an infinite. But when you start considering including like irrational number, that infinite is bigger than the normal infinite of number. Now, don't tell me like how it works. I'm just repeating things. But like, if I think like to be a mathematician, you have to be extremely creative. That's for sure.
There is math people have the capability of reading reality in a way. You know, I always use the parallelism. You remember there's a scene at the end of The Matrix, the film, when actually then he starts seeing numbers, and for him is a way actually to read the reality, what is surrounding him. And I think the way we could use data today is a way actually to help understanding what's happening around us, and to anticipate a little bit trends, behaviors, and so on. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. Dude, like we are in Vegas. Before going to the second question, I gotta ask you, what's your favorite number?
My favorite number is 7.
7. Are you gonna play tonight?
Maybe.
Okay, good. Let's go. Second question. The Atlantic takes about 3-4 weeks to cross.
Yeah.
If you are fast and you take shortcuts and get lucky, it can be done in about 2 weeks. But if you are out of luck and the wind is not on your side, it can easily take up to a month. Now, it sounds like the genesis of any campaign in our industry. Like you take on an assignment, you think it's gonna take up like maybe a couple of weeks, and you stuck with it like for like 2, 3, 4 months. When that happens, the length of time stretches in front of you, expand in front of you. You have to use all your tools you have in your box to motivate yourself. How do you react to a situation like that? You step into an assignment, you thought it would be easy, and suddenly it becomes a nightmare. How do you react to it?
It's again, it's a nightmare, as you said, but also is what actually is fascinating about trying out new projects. With using the comparison with the ocean, there is a moment when actually you're on a beach. You go to the ocean, and at the beginning it's very difficult. Yeah, because actually you face the water, the resistance of the water, also some the corals, whatsoever, and then some point you're in the middle of the sea, so you try to push harder and harder, and then some point you think, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna surround, and you think you're still, but then you're moving. And actually, when you think, okay, there's nothing, some point you arrive to something else. And this is the process that happens with creativity. So the beginning is very, very hard. It's it takes a lot of effort. And then some point you need to let it go. And also to pretend that you're not working or you're not thinking, but in your reality you're doing. And then you land on something.
That's a great advice. Would you give this advice to junior people that get into the business? Would be that like almost like a recipe to succeed when hard moment comes your way?
I think so. I mean, this is the way our mind works. At the beginning you need to get a lot of information to try to understand what you're doing, and then some point actually your mind creates connection that you don't even see. But especially when you're relaxed, when you think you're not making effort.
Absolutely. I think the same way work with momentum, any type of momentum, even like physical momentum, right? Like a kid's riding a bicycle. When we ride a bicycle, the first like 2, 3, you gotta get momentum. You gotta get like the foot on the pedal, right? But once you get momentum, then like the ride is really easy. But even like, I ride motorcycle, like, even like when you accelerate, there is always like a sweet spot of RPM when like both pistons, they're working like, lavorano in coppia, as you say, like,
But the really good ones, the very creative people are able actually to recognize when you are, as you said, in the momentum.
In that momentum.
And to exploit it. So, for example, there's a lot of literature about writing. A lot of writers now in front of the blank page. They don't know what to do. Disaster, drinking, whatsoever. Then, some point you get the inspiration, and then you write the entire book in like in 1 week, maybe. So, again, in advertising, you should do the same. Difficult, nothing. And when you get this inspiration, then you have to focus like hell and to get everything out of it.
It seems like the perfect analogy with like surfing too, right? Stand up on the paddle board.
Waiting, yeah.
Yeah, you paddle, and then you stand up, and now when you stand up, you got right. That's awesome, man. That's great. Look, third question: a broken mast, floating containers, whales, storms, lightning, waves, sinking. These are only a few of the dangers one must consider before crossing the ocean. Tomorrow, a young kid is going to start trying to cross the ocean of the advertising business. There are a lot of dangers out there. There are a lot of things you need to watch out. But tell me one thing that truly he needs to consider. And it doesn't have to be a European thing, it can be a global thing. This kid is going to start tomorrow. The night before, you sit down with him. You talk to him. You have the chance to tell him one thing. Watch out to what? Watch out for what?
Is to get satisfied with the good. It's always the same thing. I know it sounds like a cliche, but that is the big issue. I've seen it so many times because you get prepared. It's difficult, and when you think you have something good, then you stop. That's the big risk. Like again, comparing with the ocean is like if you stop at the first island, you get to. And getting satisfied with yourself is the most difficult issue.
Let me throw at you another thing that's is never mentioned, but I think is like it's part of our creative mind. Is overthinking. I noticed that a lot of creative, they never let the brain go.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna bring another analogy of an analogy, but it's in boxing. One of the most important things when you step into the ring is like once you get your strategy right, let your hand go. You had to let your hand go. You can't just like think too much about what kind of combination you're gonna throw at your opponent. I work with a lot of creatives in my career. Some of them, they overthink to a point that they paralyze themselves. And nothing is good enough, and nothing is good enough, and nothing gonna get produced. I remember on the first edition of Transatlantic, only one person touched upon this topic, and funny enough, it was one of the greatest legends in the art director industry, Marcello Serpa. And he told me, like, look, Simone, one thing that I believe that, like, people do is, like, overthink all the time. He says, like, when I create something, I'm not going to think if it's good or bad. I just do it. I just create it. It doesn't really matter. I let my hands go.
Yeah.
Would you say that to a young kid? Have you experienced that, young kids?
A little bit, yes, but I think the issue that I see, from my side, is slightly different. It's a little bit more about trying to be always in control.
Always in control.
Yes. So which is still connected with overthinking, but I see a lot of people trying to actually micromanaging is the issue that we have in our society, especially in the creative process, and always being in control on all the phases. And
nobody embrace cows. Everybody celebrate cows, but nobody give a shit about cows.
Absolutely. And especially, I'll give you an example. For example, you hire like a great director or a great musician, and then I see people trying to direct people that have much more experience than them. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Yeah.
So if you see in the creative process, for example, in cinema, you have great editors and the director, so doesn't even give the brief to the editor. It's like, this is the footage. Up to you how you edit the film, and this is something that we should all learn. Let it go, because the idea doesn't belong to you anymore. It's bigger than you actually.
Yeah. So you would say also watch out for micromanagers.
Big time.
Big time. Let's feel a micromanager, man.
But it's the issue that we have in general. We because we are so insecure about our life, what's happening, war, lockdown, whatsoever, that when we have something, we try to be very in control of things.
Yeah, of course. Look, this is like a universal issue. I mean, it's like I think like micromanaging. It's an issue that is very, very common, even in the United States, on any level, on any scale. And like I think like one of the reasons why we are having so many meetings all the time is like because people have to be in control all the time. And so again, I'm a strong believer that like even though chaos is celebrated, it's not much embraced. You know, it's kind of like the same thing to me with failure. Failure is like a great word that work on manifesto and in film, but do we really actually embrace failure? I don't know to which point we embrace failure, because every time you fail, you pay for it. They make you pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, like there is a lot of like, you know, that you need to be dissected on this topic. But yeah, let's move on on the fourth question. In nautical lingo, a reciprocal course is when you travel from point A to point B,
Yeah.
and then from point B to point A. So if you don't know your reciprocal course, you can't go back where you came from. Now, you took like the role of Publicis worldwide to a new level. I mean, you start from Italy. You were probably the first and the only one that truly, like, you know, exported, like, you know, the Italian creativity to the point that I told you today offline. I was like, oh man, I'm so happy to
Finally.
meet you, because people have been telling me you gotta meet Bruno, right? So you had this amazing like transatlantic voyage inside you. And I know that, like, you know, part of the reciprocal course is like to look back and understand, okay, I can go back that way if I need to. Do you ever look back? In tough moment, do you ever say, you know, like, whatever happened, let me see what the coastline is, because I can go back there?
You always have to look back to me. You know, I have, let's say, a rule that is always like look back, always look at the experience, but never repeat. So to me, it's important to look back in order that you don't repeat. It's not even about repeating mistakes,
Right.
but repeating is so boring. And again, you know, what's interesting, try to do.
But to avoid repetition, to avoid like making the same mistake, you had to look back. You have to constantly like taking shot. There was another interview I had. I think it was with Aki Spicer. He's a chief strategy officer.
Yeah.
And he was telling me, like, you know, Simone, is like one of the most interesting things, like, as an industry, we don't take shots. We don't take stocks. Like, we don't really analyze anything we do. We just move on. We just always forward. We don't even like take the time to sit down and say, okay, what the heck just happened? Let me look back. Let me analyze.
Yeah. But actually, you know, what's interesting is like when you look back, you're moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when you stop.
Right.
But if you look back, you never stop.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's impossible to look back and stop. Look back means that at some point you go back to your path, to your direction.
Absolutely.
It's I work a lot with Formula One drivers for campaigns and so on, and they told me there is this rule in Formula One, because unfortunately they don't have the time. You know, to stop and to sit and to discuss. So all the brainstorming that they have is they do it by walking.
Okay.
And they have this rule: if you're discussing by walking, you are forced actually to look ahead. So the discussion, also the fight, is with a very clear goal to move ahead. When one of the two stops, it means that it's not open actually to progress, to move the idea.
That's a beautiful
forward.
way
Yeah.
of like approaching problems.
Yeah.
That's how they do it.
Yeah, always.
Do you do walking meetings?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes.
It was one of Steve Jobs' like things. I believe it's like or someone else in the Silicon Valley. Now I don't want to say the wrong name, but this walking meeting is a very popular like method, like in the Silicon Valley, to get over like bumps on the road, and like to get the clarity in the mind, like, you know.
At the same time, you enjoy the process. You know, you work again, and if you work with someone, it's impossible. You can have a discussion, but it's impossible to have a fight, because if you have a real fight, you stop.
You have to stop. For a real fight, you have to stop.
Exactly. If you work, it means like you're going together somewhere.
That's awesome. I love that. Fifth question. Average sea levels have swelled over like 8 inches, about like 23 centimeters, since like 80, with about 3 of those inches gained in the last 25 years. Now, this means that almost half of the rise happened in the last 25 years. 25 years make a big difference. Now, I look at your, like, you know, resume, and I see that you have been at Publicis since 2011. I'm not gonna even begin to tell you that for me, years, I count by dog years. For me, like 1 year at the agency is 7 years. So 11 years, I should make like a lot of fucking years, man. So you have been like 11 years at Publicis, since you joined Publicis. How did this like 11 years change you inside your ocean, like, you know, your personal ocean? How did it change you?
Everything has changed. So first of all, there are two type of creatives. The ones that often change agency because
Right.
they need to renovate themselves, and the ones actually that are quite loyal to a place and they prefer to change the place.
Right.
So I'm one of those creatives. I stayed, for example, in J. Walter Thompson
Right.
for 10 years, and then I moved to Publicis.
But do you think like Bruno Bertelli 2022 in Las Vegas, now like that door open and there is Bruno Bertelli 2011 coming in, you guys can talk to each other, or you guys gonna fight?
No, it's still no the talking. I think
You can still talk.
Yes,
You
yes,
guys
yes.
gonna be friends?
I hope so. With some, I mean, some advices, but yes, yes. I always had like a very clear in my mind what I wanted to be. So I knew since the beginning. You were telling me that you always wanted to be in California.
Yes.
I knew I always wanted to have like an international job. Always.
Why?
So, because it's
Because I wanted to be in California for the American literature. Like, you know, most of my writers, they were coming from California. And, you know, Jim Morrison screwed me up, and the Mojave Desert like did like all the rest. But like, you know, James Roy and like Charles Bukowski and John Fontaine, like all these people, they just like literally were sirens for me, like telling me like you should come to California. So the books and the and the deep love I have for the American literature is like it's California. Why you international?
because I was always interested in traveling and to make something that could make a difference. So to be, you know, relevant, culturally relevant. I find, you know, my job interesting if you can make like something that actually scaled. And I love creating brands, making love brands, and it's impossible to work for a brand on a small scale, just for a market. I always thought that actually to make a difference you have to work on a global scale.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can't help but agree with you about this. Like, of course, like, you know, my international career began like in 2005. So there is something about working on a global scale that allow you to see things from truly like a different perspective. And I noticed that if Simone from 2001 were to walk like, you know, into this room, I don't know if it would be probably like, you know, there would be not much talking, because I think like when you are exposed to different cultures and different like approaches and different mindsets, it truly changed you.
Yeah.
There was this amazing interview I watched, and it was Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy was playing this. He says like I was playing the character of Charles Bronson in one of the movie, and he says like, you know, to play the character I actually spent time with Charles Bronson a little bit with the murderer. And then he says like after the movie completed, we just kept in touch. And he says like I was going through a lot of shit in my personal life, and one night like I came back home and like I got this message left on the answering machine from Charles Bronson and wanted to talk to me. And then we just start talking. And one thing he said to me, I will remember, say, you know, Tom, like I think like if you want to grow up, you have to cut some parts off of you. And it died, like, you know, of course, like say those words like told by murderers, like sounds like kind of like, you know, dark. But if you think about it, you had to lose a lot of things off your weight. And not just like your physical weight, but your mental weight in order for you to grow. And I think like to be exposed internationally, that's what happened to you. You had to lose a lot. You had to be ready to lose a lot of your beliefs and just reshuffle everything.
You have to focus less and less on yourself and more on what's around you. So you need to have this helicopter view. You're right. which in a way is a way actually to be a little bit more far from micromanaging, being controlled.
Absolutely.
So you need to have like a view, like a point of view, and actually try to read what's happening. That's the thing.
Okay, look, there is a question that we just touched upon, like, just briefly, and it was about the failure, and I told you how failure has been like extremely, like, you know, glamorized, and so chaos has been glamorized. I believe that there are parts of our jobs as a creative that have been glamorized. Just tell me one part that you think is glamorized and it's like it's totally bullshit, that you say it's not that way, and people like outside they like, you know, outside our industry maybe look at us and you had to tell them, no man, it's like it's not that way.
I think it's the creative process, the struggle, the suffering. To me, and this is something that I learned, as I told you, I started working in US, and there's one thing that I learned in US, that obviously talent is an important part, but also technique is as important as. So it's all about studying, having the capability of you know, on putting down what you have in your mind and so on. If you want to be a good writer, you need to know how to write a book, how to write a novel. So the technique is much more important than all the rest. And I think there is this myth that you know, if you're a genius, ideas come to your mind, then you have the vision. It's all bullshit. You know, Stanley Kubrick was studying art, was studying colors. You know, how to actually to frame a picture.
I think you're right. You know, I experimented this. I mean, when I was young, right, I was typing like poetry on, like, you know, using a typewriter, and purposely I would start writing at 1 o'clock at night and like all the way through like 6 o'clock in the morning, like living this bohemian style, like, you know, in Rome and San Lorenzo. It's like, it make me laugh thinking about it. But one thing that I actually learned, and waiting for like inspiration to eat me, like if it was a gust of wind coming like through the window, like, you know, stupid stuff. Now what I learned is like discipline. Discipline is paramount, right? Like even if you don't feel like, stare at the blank page, start writing something. Even if you don't feel like, do it every day, create a routine for yourself. And I embraced that kind of mindset, like I would say, like in the past, like 5 or 6 years. I started really creating a routine for myself. Even those days that I have nothing to say, I write. I'll do it to create and to keep that routine in me. And I think there was like, it's so easy to glamorize, like, you know, chaos. Because chaos is more sexy than discipline, but I think like we should glamorize discipline rather than chaos. And you're right.
Hemingway was writing every day,
single day,
like from 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, even if in the night I was getting drunk or whatsoever. So
of
absolutely, I really love. There is a famous speech done by Kobe Bryant about the Mamba mentality.
Yeah, the Mamba mentality.
Which is all about actually working harder and doing the extra hour. And if you put like that extra hour day by day, then actually the numbers of hours compared to your
it's running. That I know the speech you're referring to is actually, I don't know why, but it's running on my TikTok feed all the time. And he's talking about like practice, and he says like, look, like, you know, normal people wake up like at 7 o'clock, and like, you know, I wake up at 4 o'clock and I already put 2 hours practice, go back home, have breakfast, go back to the gym, like, you know, other 2 hours. So he end up explaining how like within a day he's able to put like at least like 5 training sessions compared to someone that only put 2 training sessions.
My creative director used to tell me it's all about numbers, going back to numbers.
Going back to numbers.
So if you have like 10 ideas, you know, the possibility to have one very good idea is minimum.
Right.
But if you have 100 ideas,
you have more chances.
Of course. So the whole point is having like 10 ideas a day, and then in 10 days you have 100 ideas.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
And again, it has nothing to do with repeat yourself or so on. It's just giving more chances for the good ideas actually to be in the bunch.
Okay, look, this is the last question before like I end up on the shore. So I know that you just arrived here. So again, I think like this set of like questions are perfect, but the last one I found that today was a little bit off because like people just arrived at the London International Awards, the new jury presidents arrive. So you haven't formed many memories yet. However, I truly believe like it's easy to form memories in Vegas because it's such a crazy place that memory forms even like at every hour. So imagine like when are you gonna fly back to Italy?
I think Friday or Saturday.
Friday or Saturday you fly back to Italy and like you probably have like luggage and carry on. I'm gonna ask you to pick up two memories, even from like recent memory from the last like 24 hours, and put it one in your carry-on and one in your luggage.
Okay.
You have to tell me which one goes where and why.
Wow, difficult question.
I tell you that there is a rationale behind.
Okay, one memory is that recently I watched the film Elvis. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I think it's
the guy is amazing.
And also gives you like a different perspective of Elvis.
Yeah.
And it made me think, when I arrived, just landing, I always thought Las Vegas as a kind of freedom land, without rules. And that moment I thought actually the place kind of a cage. Because that was, for Elvis. So I thought about actually in the middle of the desert as Las Vegas, a kind of like a golden cage. That's what the first thought that I have, and it's still sticking to my mind because I really, really love that film. And the second thing.
Where'd you put this?
Sorry?
Where'd you put this memory?
Good question. In the carry-on, probably.
Okay, go on. And then I'll tell you why I ask you why like carry on the luggage.
The second thing is instead that I went last night, I was very tired. I went to the swimming pool and just dipped. So getting back to the ocean and to the
carry-on is where you put like your most precious like memory,
okay.
Right? Because of course nobody can steal or lose your carry-on. The luggage, everybody can lose your luggage. These days, they get lost really easily. So you have no problem in losing the image of you like swimming in the in the pool of Encore like hotel in Vegas.
Perfect.
That's so funny, man. Like, look, it was amazing. I finally met you, and I'm so glad I crossed your ocean. I can't thank you enough for being here. Spend like half an hour with me.
It's a pleasure. Bruno. Very, very pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much.
And next time, it's in Italy.